Cyrene is probably one of the most hyped characters we are going to have for a while, as she kind of just is the Elijah XP. While on paper she did seem really strong, there is a very big downside to her kit, which could potentially kill the entire character outside of specific teams. And today we're going to be talking about just that. We're going to be going over that issue. We're also going to be going over what's really strong on her and kind of just how balancing should go when it comes to her. Before I get into the video, be sure to check out the description to join the Discord server. The server practically is everything Honkai related, but it also has Genshin, other channels such as Arknights and Wuthering Waves, and you can really just talk about anything you want there, so be sure to check it out in the description below to join, and let's get straight into the video. So Cyrene does have a lot of good things going for her, but also pretty bad things. Her buffs on one side are pretty good, really good if you are a Chrysos Heir. Outside of that, it's pretty good. It's not really like, game changing. There's some damage dealt you get. You also get access to true damage, which is really good. But nowadays a lot of people have access to E1 Tribi and E1 Tribi teams. If you're not a Chrysos Heir, you're still going to use E1 Tribi over her in practically every case. So we're not really going to talk about the universality of her, since when it comes to buffs for non-Chrysos Heirs, it's not really that great. Another thing that's good for her is her actual capabilities to be a sub DPS. We've had 3 cases, 2 of which are Harmony cases now, and Cyrene being the third one. Tribi, she actually ended up being a sub DPS that was also support that actually added into good damage over time. Next case was Cyrene, where it was kind of a flop unless you have AoE buffers like Tribi herself on the team, maybe even someone like Robin on the team. Cyrene's personal damage is really mid. It gets further amplified with Eidolons obviously, but compared to Tribi, it was just not really a good thing that they did. But then the third case with Cyrene, they actually ended up doing it well. Cyrene has a big shot you can do and enhanced basic attack, which both actually do really solid damage, especially the arrow shot she does have in her ultimate, which you can actually see pretty often, especially if you have someone like RMC on the team. If you're buffing someone that has a permanent buff, such as someone like Castris, where now the second time you use it, you can just end up just spamming the actual attack rather than the buff. It actually adds up to really solid damage, which of course further amplifies if you have more AoE buffers on the field. And then we do take a look at her exclusive buffs for Chrysos Heirs. Majority of these are significantly powerful, like honestly Eidolon level, but some of them honestly is not like the craziest, especially when you do factor in the problem that Cyrene has that we will talk about in a bit. Aglia is given a one-time effect to get a bunch of energy, increase damage dealt, and also get a big 36% increase to target defense ignore, which also lasts until she ends her actual Supreme Stand state, which in most cases you won't. So in a lot of cases, it becomes a permanent buff instead. Tribi is able to do more damage by getting an additional instance of the additional damage from her zone and also able to ignore 12% of the target's defense. Mira gets the ability to increase crit damage and also get a action advance by 100% if he's not in Vendetta, and also immediately gets a God Slayer be God. Castris is able to overflow her Nuba to increase her damage dealt for every point that you do overflow, and if there's 2 or less enemies on the field, it increases even more. Anoxus is a one-time effect, which kind of works as a pseudo action advancer by giving him 100% action advance as well. Increases skill damage and attack percent, and increases his skill damage instance by 3. Hyacine gains energy, and is able to increase the healing value for a little eco spam spread skill. Cypher gains a even more debuffer sided buff, which also increases her own personal damage with a damage dealt increase. But I was able to further defense shred the enemies, so if you have that paired with a signature icon, it's even better. Final has an absolutely broken one, which will kind of depend on how you play. If you're like a zero cycler, it doesn't really affect you because obviously you want to finish it within the first ultimate anyways. But if you're not, 60% crit rate is really good for his building. Additional extra fire damage you can get, which the annoying thing is it's fire damage, so you can't amplify it by physical orb. So it's kind of questionable, but the whole thing of not actually exiting your ult and resetting your actual extra turns. So for anyone that's obviously not zero cycling because you're locked into certain action value anyways, then can actually be really strong. Hyacine gets a big damage dealt increase as well, and also a big energy regen as well, and also gives her the ability to proc dots on enemies when using basic attack or skill. Cyrene is able to gain a point of charge after Kudamon ends, and also increase the crit damage for the character with military merit. Evernight is able to gain an additional Memorious stack while also getting a big damage dealt increase. And the Dawning buff can increase the damage for the bondmate, have more instances of damage corresponding to the bondmate's type as well, and increase shield effect. That does definitely depend on the team you're running him on. Nonetheless, there are a lot of buffs. I'm not going to go over the ones I didn't mention because it's already just been a lot, but most of these can actually be Eidolon level. Unfortunately, for someone like Mire, except in very specific setups, it's not like the greatest. But now I really want to stop wasting time and talk about the biggest downside for Cyrene, which really kind of makes her a side grade or a straight up downgrade for a lot of these teams. And the reason for that is her ultimate charge. The way her ultimate works is you do need to reach 24 recollection stacks, or points I guess in this case. Once you have 24, you can finally use it, and thereafter every one will count as 12. So you get to 24, you can use it, and then it will be 12 everything after that, including that one. I don't know why you have to get to 24 first, I guess because the first time it gives everyone ult back and such. But the first time you have to get to 24, it actually will consume only 12, and then you can use another one to either buff another person on the team or use her shot. The problem is her stack generation is just incredibly slow outside of specific teams. And the teams are, you guessed it, Remembrance teams / Castress teams. She gets 3 recollection points by using her own skill. Another way to get it is when combat begins or after Cyrene takes action. Teammates and member sprites gain future, and when allied targets with future take action, they'll consume it to give her a stack. So you have to refresh it for Cyrene getting more turns. Otherwise, it won't refresh. So with Remembrance characters on the team, they have 2 ways to actually give it to her, as opposed to someone who is just one character. So Anaxa attacking is only going to give her 1, but if you have someone like Castress, where maybe she slashes, that gives her 1, then she blows up her dragon, that's 2. Another thing is her A4. Her A4 is going to exclusively give it more points for her ultimate when there are Chrysos Heirs or specifically Remembrance characters. So Chrysos Heirs can get a bit away with it. The thing is, practically every Chrysos Heir team outside of the Remembrance team isn't fully Chrysos Heir. Finon and Anaxa teams obviously include them, and then include Cyrene, sometimes Tribi. But you have to factor in other characters on the team, like you might have Robin on the team if you don't have Cyrene especially. You might have someone like Sunday, especially, who's extremely common on those teams. And not having the full amount is going to make her start with less points, as it goes from 1 to 3 Chrysos Heirs or Remembrance gives 2/3/6. So you want to have Cyrene plus 3 other Chrysos Heirs or Remembrance to give her the full 6 stacks. And the way to counteract this is, you guessed it, Eidolons. The way you get that is by obviously spending more and pulling for the solution. Hoyo is not a stranger to this. This happens a lot. It'd be one thing if it's E1, but no. The way you can kind of just mitigate this issue entirely is her E2. So it's not like an E1 fixes the thing for most supports, it's E2. Because her E2 now gives her the ability to get 12 recollection stacks starting at the beginning of battle. Meaning now, you only have to build 12 as opposed to 24 depending on the team you're running. So you pair that with a Trace, pair that with Remembrance characters and such, it's a lot faster and actually makes her the upgrade that she should be. But obviously I'm going to be talking about this problems as a E0 counterpart, because at E2 it's not really an issue to consider too much. But yes, the biggest annoyance is the fact that building her ultimate at E0 outside of these either entire Chrysos Heir teams or fully Remembrance teams is the fact that it is extremely slow, and by the time you actually get it, you can do so much more with other team setups that already exist. The only way to really counteract it is by using Mem buff on her and pairing RMC on every team. Problem with that is not everyone's going to always be able to use RMC on these teams, and another thing is we're getting closer to 4.x, which is going to give us access to a new Trailblazer, which will make them in demand as well, so we can't use both. So having RMC on the team is not going to be a long-time solution, especially because you're not only going to want to run RMC plus Cyrene and then the other teammates, sometimes RMC maybe not even want to be on the team, but the fact that it takes so long to actually get her ultimate. And I'm talking like, again, unless you're doing an RMC setup, it just takes so long. Because if you are, let's say, using Finon, and let's say Finon is the only other Chrysos Heir on the team, or actually, no, let's say Ceredra is also on the team. So let's say the team is actually Finon, Ceredra, Cyrene, and anyone else that is not going to be considered a Chrysos Heir or Remembrance. You're going to have 2 other characters, so Cyrene is actually going to start with 3 points. Her skill will practically go up before anyone else acts, so that means you're going to have 6 points. Now you have to somehow get 18 more points. And it's just going to go 1 by 1 by 1 by eventually when Cyrene acts, you can get 3, and then 1 by 1, then 1, then 1. And by the time you kind of get to the point where you can use it, the cycle is already going to end, and you wasted more time, especially since a lot of teams that Cyrene goes on effectively want to make it sustainless once again outside of Remembrance teams and Castress teams where you'll always have Hyacine. Of course, running Hyacine on these teams can be another solution, but again, that's not always going to be a team option. So yeah, that's annoying. And then when you do actually just not factor in entirely about her actual buff for the Chrysos Heirs specifically, it's really, again, not that strong. You get access to true damage, 20% of the original damage, and it's going to be one instance of each damage as opposed to Tribute calculates the total damage at the end. Tribute also is a little higher at E1. For Cyrene to get a higher value, you also need to pull for E2 as well. And then her base buffing is just kind of giving everyone a very little amount of damage dealt. So the fact that it just takes infinitely longer than normal setups to traditionally just get your ultimate on her at E0, unless you are running her on a Chrysos / Remembrance team, is going to be a big reason that kills her, as it's just generally not going to be too worth it, as it just takes way too long to get her ultimate. Now, ways I think that can kind of like counteract it to maybe make her a bit better in that scenario, mainly because she's supposed to be a character that is just straight up upgrades on every Chrysos Heir team. She should be the best in slot for any Chrysos Heir, which her buff, again, has the potential to put her on the team, but because of how slow it charges, it really just makes her not really worth it. If you pull E2, that's a different story, but if you have her at E0, it's only really an upgrade on the Chrysos / Remembrance teams entirely, and Sustainless Anoxa, kind of. But a way I think she can definitely benefit a ton is if they honestly have that extra recollection stacks in her E2, maybe toned down a bit and moved into her base kit. I think she should start with more ults, even if it does require buffs to be toned down a little bit. I still do think that even if you tone down the buffs a bit, her actual ability to get ultimate easier and quicker at E0 especially is going to be a big upgrade, as getting the buff faster and not wasting all your turns, and by the time you get it, your cycle's done, is just going to be better. So I think maybe lowering the amount you get from her E2 and then moving it to her base kit could be good. Another way is to change the actual way her talent works, and it shouldn't be when the character gains future by Cyrene gaining an action that it gives it to everyone. It should just be if anyone attacks as well. If anyone attacks, you don't have to wait, you just get it. That could be great for someone like Anoxa as well, who can kind of cheese it maybe and even get more because he gets 2 skills. This is also going to be great if you have an existing -1 on the team. Like, let's say you attack with Finon, you get a stack. You skill with Sunday, you get a stack. The Finon hit you're getting after the Sunday skill is not going to give a stack because, you know, Cyrene didn't act and you already consumed future. With this case, you would actually gain that extra stack. And same thing can apply to any other setup you're doing. So those are kind of combinations I think that can definitely help, starting with more ultimate charges and also changing the talent to be where it's not just consuming a thing to actually get it that only refreshes on Cyrene's turn, but something you just get when an ally attacks, as that can significantly help setups to actually get it more. Of course, there's probably a lot more ideas that could be even better than the ones I'm saying and even more balanced in the terms that you yourself might be thinking. Feel free to comment that down below. But that does bring the video to a close, so going over why Cyrene's buffs are good, but her crucial issue being the reason that her ultimate is just too slow to charge, is what really holds her back and can really kill the character. Of course, there is just so much time until she is out, so of course there could be more changes to that, and I will probably make a future video talking about it. But for now, I really wanted to make this video just because, you know, it's a big problem and a lot of people are talking about it, and I myself also wanted to talk about it. But if you have any ideas on how you might even fix the whole problem of her ultimate charging so slowly, feel free to comment that down below and discuss with other people in the comments. If you did enjoy the video, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all the types of style content. Again, remember to join the Discord. Description has the actual link to the join. And I'll see you later. Peace out.